Living in Southern California, we are surrounded by the surf and skate culture that encompass the daily lives of many, including myself. I have been involved with an organization called Christian Surfers since I moved here in 8th grade. It was around this time that I really started getting into surfing. When the Genius Project was introduced toward the end of my junior year, I knew this would be the perfect opportunity to raise money for Christian surfers and to get the community involved. So I decided to put on a surf contest. I went online and found the information for the City of Carlsbad event coordinator, and I gave them a call. After consulting with Julia Mira, I decided to host the contest at Ponto. There we go. This location was more ideal for participants and setting up the equipment. When summer 2017 hit, I began my project. One day while I was at work, this man came in, and he started talking to me about how he was starting up this brand new surfing magazine. I told him that I was planning on putting on a surf contest to raise money for a local Christian organization. I was beyond excited when he asked me if my surf contest would be the first feature in his new magazine. The more conversations I had with this man, he started throwing out these crazy ideas about having food and games and even a virtual surf simulator, which all sounded epic. I shared with him how one of my biggest problems with this, putting on the event, that is, was the fees. He quickly shut down any doubt I had by saying that we could get vendors to come set up and sell their product, and we would use that money to pay for the contest. It all sounded convincing, and I was easily reassured, until he went back on his word, and I realized that everything he had told me up to this point wasn't true. When I found this out, I decided to not work with him anymore. Back on my own, I started filling out the permit paperwork, and I had no idea what I was doing. I quickly became very overwhelmed, and I knew I had bitten off way more than I could chew. I worked so hard all summer, running around trying to get things in order. When I wasn't sleeping or working, I spent most of my time in my car, driving from one meeting to the next. At this point, I had no money for my contest, and I couldn't see how this was ever going to work out. I remember going home and being so frustrated that I had to just take a day and decompress. After getting counsel from friends and family, I decided to postpone the contest. I was so disappointed in myself. All my efforts up to this point had no meaning. Furthermore, beyond this being a giant waste of my time, I had marketed myself to business owners as a professional young adult, and none of my words came true. I was so upset. I felt like a stupid 17-year-old high school student with a dream that was never going to come true. I took about a month break before returning to this idea in the fall of 2017. I was determined to finish what I started, so I began working with a different Christian surfers group. It was here that I met John Lindsley. John is one of the founders of the Christian Surfing Federation, and he has been putting on contests for many years, including his own surf series. He had a lot of wisdom and knowledge to share with me, and I took all of his advice. I set the new contest date for March 17th, and I began doing little things along the way to work towards my goal. Unfortunately, life happened, and by the time January rolled around, I didn't have much progress to show for my work. Upon this realization, I met up with John, we sat down, filled out all the permit paperwork, which I had to revise many, many times before the final product was deemed acceptable. This was an arduous task because the city needed very specific details, and I didn't quite have those figured out yet. I then began making a sponsorship proposal, and John made a one-sheet, basically stating who we are, what we're trying to do, and how people can get involved. I also reached out to surf companies by phone call or email, asking for their support, donations, or sponsorship. In the end, I never heard back from a single one, but through friends and connections, I managed to link up with some people who were stoked on what I was doing, and they were able to donate products. We had Dakine, Cobian, Real Salt Life, Degree 33 surfboards, San Diego board shops, and WSL gear. I went around town collecting these big brown boxes and putting them on the floor in my room, and I remember thinking it was way more than I ever thought I could get. I kept asking around for help, to seeing if anyone was willing to donate or participate in any way, even after being shut down time after time after time. One of my close family friends came up to me and told me that his boss might be willing to sponsor my contest, and he spoke to him on my behalf. After about 2 weeks of talking back and forth, the allotment of $1,000 was donated. I was so happy and amazed that my contest was actually going to happen. I made up a flyer, and I began getting the word out through social media. I also went to 3 different Christian Surfers chapters and told them of the event I was putting on and asking for their participation. I also put flyers in surf shops from Encinitas all the way to Oceanside. Many of my friends supported me in this process by reposting on social media or getting flyers out in their schools. A week before the contest, I got word from Julia about how much the contest would be to put on. It was still a little steep for what I was able to manage, being that we were a week out from the contest date. So instead of having the contest at 7 a.m., like I had originally planned, by putting it on at 10 a.m., we would save ourselves $600. It just so happened that that check we received covered the contest fees in whole. I was so thankful that the financial aspect worked itself out to the dollar amount, and now I could focus my efforts on other aspects of the contest. That Monday before my contest, people slowly started signing up and sending me entry forms that I had put up on my website. By Wednesday, we had 8 people signed up, and by Friday, we had 35 to 40 people signed up. I took all this information, put it in a spreadsheet, and sent it over to John so he could make the heat sheets. The night before, I barely slept. I remember waking up at 6 a.m. before my alarm went off, putting on some warm clothes, and getting in my car to head down to the beach to meet John. To my dismay, it was raining. And not the light Carlsbad sprinkle we get every spring, but it was like this huge bucket of water had dumped on the earth. And this was the only thing that could have possibly deterred my contest from happening at this point in time. There was no other option than just to push through and keep going. So I began taking things out of John's trailer. We initially had 3 people that helped set up, but by the time we were done, 2 hours later, we had 20 people who had helped set up. The rain finally stopped, and the sun started coming out as people started arriving. I was so thankful that the weather finally cleared up, because this meant people were more inclined to come participate and check the event out. We had a raffling station set up under an Easy Up and a concession station next to it where you could buy donuts and coffee. Heat sheets were posted on the board, jerseys were lined up on the pole, contestants were checking in, judges were briefed, and the horn for the first heat blew. I could finally breathe again. The whole day went on beautifully, with some fun waves and a great amount of people from the community coming out to support. The judges even took turns rotating out so they too could compete in the contest. Heats ran all day, and so did the fun. We even had a PA system set up, where we had music playing throughout the beach the entire day. This is also how we announced our raffle ticket winners and thanked our sponsors. When heats were done running, we rallied everyone together to give out prizes and announce the winners. Everyone had such a fantastic time, and the contestants were stoked on the goodie bags that they won. Each goodie bag had a value of $75 to $150 worth of product. When all was said and done, there was a large group of people that stayed to help tear down, and that was all done in about an hour. I was so proud of what we had accomplished. I realized towards the end of last summer that this was nothing I could have done on my own. But because of friends, sponsors, family, and coworkers, this was all possible. I pushed through even the hardest of times because I knew this was something I was totally capable of doing. I have been competing in surf contests since I was in 8th grade, and I knew what it would take to put on an event like this. It had been a personal goal of mine to put on a contest for the last few years, and I wanted to see if this was something I was actually capable of doing. My takeaway from this experience would be to find a way. I worked for a year and a half on this project, and there were so many times when I wanted to quit and say, well, I tried, there's my project. But after I saw the fruits of my labor, I knew that everything I had worked up to at this point was worth it. Every bit of paperwork, every hour of time spent, every meeting I went to. We ended up raising over $1,200. I was so thankful that I could be a part of this experience and given the opportunity to make this happen. This was one of the most impactful things that has ever happened to me. So many people had such a great time that they asked me to make this an annual event. And that's my hope, to continue this project going year after year and to continue to get the community involved. Thank you.